Everyone says a mother should sacrifice everything for her daughter. I walked through fire for mine, but when she uninvited me from her wedding because my scars ruined the photos, I decided to stop paying for her perfection. The humidity in Charleston, South Carolina, is not just weather. It is a physical presence. It wraps around you like a wet wool blanket, pressing against your skin and stealing the breath right out of your lungs. On this particular Wednesday morning, the air was heavy with the scent of pluff mud from the marshes and the roasting coffee beans from the trendy cafe where I sat waiting for my daughter. My name is Barbara Miller. Most people call me Barb. I am 58 years old, and I have spent the last 30 years building a commercial landscaping empire from the ground up. I am used to dirt under my fingernails, the roar of heavy machinery, and the scorching heat of the southern sun. I am not used to places like the Gilded Bean, with its white marble tabletops, geometric light fixtures, and baristas who look like they just stepped off a runway. I chose a table in the back corner, positioning myself carefully. I always sit with my right side facing the room. My right side is the good side. It is the face I was born with, smooth skin, a sharp jawline, and a bright green eye. My left side is the map of my life's greatest tragedy. From my temple down to my collarbone, the skin is a landscape of thick, rippled scar tissue. It is a mottled tapestry of pink and white, the result of third-degree burns sustained 20 years ago. It pulls at the corner of my mouth, giving me a permanent, slight grimace, and it has fused parts of my neck in a way that makes turning my head difficult. I took a sip of my black coffee. It was lukewarm. I checked my watch. Jessica was 20 minutes late. This was typical. My daughter, Jessica Miller, lived on her own time zone, a time zone dictated by the lighting of the sun and the engagement metrics of her social media account. She was 26 years old, beautiful, and completely consumed by the image of perfection. I looked down at the notebook on the table. It was open to a checklist. The wedding was 3 days away, Saturday. The Grand Bohemian Hotel. It was going to be the event of the season. Or at least, that is what Jessica kept telling me. I ran my finger down the list of expenses I had already covered. Venue rental, $15,000. Catering for 200 guests, $35,000. Open bar, $10,000. Florals, $12,000. The dress, $8,000. The numbers were staggering. $80,000. It was more money than my late husband and I had made in the first 5 years of our marriage combined. But I had paid it. I had written the checks without blinking, because she was my daughter, because her father wasn't here to walk her down the aisle, because I wanted her to have the fairy tale I never had. The bell above the door chimed. Jessica breezed in. She looked like a vision. Her blonde hair was blown out to perfection, catching the light like spun gold. She was wearing a white linen sundress and oversized sunglasses. She held her phone in front of her face, recording a video as she walked. "Hey guys," she chirped to her invisible audience. "Just meeting Mom for a quick coffee break before the final fitting. Wedding week craziness is in full swing. Swipe up for my skincare routine because honestly the stress is real." She lowered the phone, tapped the screen, and slid into the chair opposite me. She didn't look at me. She looked at the reflection of herself in the darkened window to check her lipstick. "Hi, Mom," she said, finally acknowledging my presence. "Sorry I am late. The lighting outside was incredible, and I had to get some content for the reels." "It is fine, Jessica," I said, forcing a smile with the good side of my mouth. "I know you are busy." "Busy does not even cover it," she sighed. She signaled the waiter without looking at him. "Iced oat milk latte, 2 pumps of vanilla, and make it pretty, please." She turned back to me. Her eyes scanned my face, but they didn't land on my eyes. They hovered, as they always did, on the left side of my cheek, on the scars. "So," she said, pulling a folder out of her designer tote bag, "I wanted to talk to you about the timeline for Saturday." "I am ready," I said. "I have my dress. It is that navy blue silk one you liked. High collar, long sleeves. I had chosen it specifically to cover as much of the scarring as possible. I knew how much appearances mattered to her. Right, Jessica said. She drummed her manicured fingernails on the marble table. The navy dress. It is. It is a nice dress, Mom. There was a but coming. I could hear it in the pause. I could feel it in the way the air between us suddenly felt colder than the air conditioning warranted. But what? I asked. Jessica took a deep breath. She reached across the table and took my hand, my right hand, the unscarred one. Her skin was soft, untouched by labor, untouched by fire. Mom, she began, her voice dropping to that serious, practiced tone she used when she was asking for money. Hunter and I have been talking. And the photographer, well, he is very high-end. He shoots for Vogue. He shoots for the top bridal magazines. I know, I said. I paid his deposit. $5,000. Exactly, she said. And because we are trying to get the wedding published, the aesthetic has to be flawless. I mean perfect. We are going for a very specific look. Ethereal, timeless, symmetrical. My stomach tightened. I knew that word. Symmetrical. What are you saying, Jessica? She squeezed my hand. She looked sad, but it was a performance. I had seen this look when she wanted a new car. I had seen this look when she wanted me to fire a gardener she didn't like. If you have ever met someone who uses a soft voice to deliver a brutal blow, someone who dresses up cruelty as kindness, you know exactly the type of person my daughter had become. If you despise people who take everything and give nothing back but shame, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, because I am about to show you exactly how to handle them. But in that moment, I just sat there, waiting for the knife. Mom, she said, the lighting in the grand bohemian ballroom is very dramatic. It creates a lot of shadows. And, well, your texture. She gestured vaguely to the left side of my face. My texture, I repeated. Your scars, she whispered. They catch the light in a way that it pulls focus. The photographer is worried. He says it will be hard to edit around. And Hunter's parents, they are very image conscious. You know how the Davises are. I sat very still. 20 years ago, on a Tuesday night, much like this one, I was in the kitchen of our small starter home. I was frying chicken. Jessica was 6 years old. She was playing on the floor with her dolls. A grease fire had started. It happened so fast. 1 minute I was cooking. The next, a column of fire was shooting up to the ceiling. The cabinets caught instantly. The smoke alarm screamed. I turned to grab the extinguisher, but the explosion of heat knocked it out of my hand. The fire rolled across the ceiling like a wave. I saw Jessica. She was frozen in the corner, screaming. The fire was dripping down from the ceiling, melting the plastic of the light fixture directly above her. I did not think. I did not calculate. I dove. I threw my body over hers. I curled myself around her like a shield. I buried her face in my chest, and I stayed there. I stayed there while the burning plastic dripped onto the side of my face. I stayed there while the heat seared the skin off my neck. I stayed there until the firefighters kicked down the door and dragged us out. Jessica did not have a scratch on her, not one mark. I spent 3 months in the burn unit. I underwent 12 skin grafts. I lost the ability to turn my head fully to the left. And now, 20 years later, the girl I had burned for was sitting across from me, sipping an oat milk latte, telling me that the scars I earned saving her life were ruining her aesthetic. So, Jessica continued, oblivious to the memories flashing behind my eyes, we think it would be better, for everyone, if you didn't come to the ceremony or the reception. The silence that followed was deafening. The clatter of the coffee machine, the chatter of other patrons, the music, it all faded into a dull roar. You are uninviting me, I asked. My voice was steady. It surprised me. To my own daughter's wedding? Oh, Mom, do not be dramatic, she said, rolling her eyes. I am not uninviting you from my life, just the event. You can still come over the next day for brunch. We can look at the photos together. But for the big day, we just need it to be perfect. For the magazine, she smiled. It was a bright, terrifying smile. Besides, she added, you hate crowds. You are always self-conscious about your face. This is really a kindness, if you think about it. You can stay home, order takeout, and celebrate in spirit. It will be so much more relaxing for you. She framed my exclusion as a favor. She packaged her shame as benevolence. And Hunter? I asked. What does he think? Hunter agrees, she said quickly. He thinks it will keep the stress levels down. His mother is a lot to handle, and we don't want any awkward stares. We just want the day to flow. She let go of my hand. She picked up her latte. She took a sip, leaving a perfect rim of pink lipstick on the straw. So, she said, you understand, right? You are okay with this? I looked at her. I looked at the smooth, unblemished skin of her cheek. I looked at the expensive dress I had paid for. I looked at the engagement ring on her finger that I had helped Hunter pick out. I felt something inside me break. It wasn't a loud break. It was a quiet snap, like a dry twig stepping on in the woods. It was the sound of the tether that bound me to her finally giving way. For 20 years, I had told myself that her selfishness was just a phase. I told myself that she was young, that she would grow out of it. I told myself that, deep down, she appreciated what I had done for her. But she didn't. She didn't see a mother. She didn't see a savior. She saw a wallet and an eyesore. I understand, I said. Jessica let out a huge breath of relief. Oh, thank God. You are the best, Mom. I knew you would get it. You are so supportive. She checked her phone. Crap, I have to run, she said, standing up. The florist is meeting me at the venue in 10 minutes to finalize the centerpiece height. We are doing white hydrangeas and orchids. Very chic. She leaned down. She kissed the air next to my right cheek. She was careful not to touch me. Love you, she chirped. I will text you on Sunday. And then, she was gone. She walked out of the coffee shop, hips swaying, phone back in front of her face, already recording her next update. Update, guys. Just had the hardest conversation with my mom, but she was so sweet about it. Boundaries are so important for mental health. Now off to see the flowers. I watched her go. I sat there for a long time. The coffee in my cup had gone completely cold. I signaled the waiter. Check, please, I said. The young lady put it on your tab, the waiter said apologetically. Of course she did, I said. I paid the bill. I tipped the waiter 20%. I stood up. I walked out of the coffee shop and into the oppressive heat of the Charleston afternoon. The sun beat down on my scars, making the skin feel tight and hot, a phantom memory of the fire. I walked to my truck. It was a heavy-duty Ford F-250, covered in dust, with the logo Miller Commercial Landscaping painted on the side. It was a working vehicle. It was the truck that paid for Jessica's college. It was the truck that paid for her condo. It was the truck that paid for the wedding I was no longer allowed to attend. I climbed into the driver's seat. I slammed the door. I did not cry. I did not scream. I was done crying. Crying is for people who have hope that things will change. I had no hope left. I had something better. I had leverage. I started the engine. I did not drive home. I drove to my office. The office was a small brick building on the outskirts of town, surrounded by greenhouses and rows of irrigation piping. It was quiet and cool inside. I walked to my desk. I sat down in my leather chair. I opened the bottom drawer. I pulled out a thick file folder labeled Jessica's Wedding. I opened it. Inside were the contracts, the invoices, the receipts. I pulled out the invoice from the Grand Bohemian Hotel. It was for the final balance of the reception. Food, beverage, venue rental, service fees, tax. Total due, $85,420. The payment was scheduled to run automatically on my American Express card on Friday morning, 24 hours before the event. I looked at the phone on my desk. I picked up the receiver. I dialed a number I knew by heart. I had done business with the Grand Bohemian for years. I supplied all the palm trees for their courtyard. I handled their seasonal landscaping. Grand Bohemian Events Department, a crisp voice answered. Hello, I said. This is Barbara Miller. I need to speak to Mr. Alistair, immediately. One moment, Mrs. Miller. A few seconds later, a warm, British voice came on the line. Barbara, how are you? We are all getting ready for the big day. The hydrangeas just arrived, and they are spectacular. Hello, Alistair, I said. My voice was calm. It was businesslike. I am calling to make a change to the billing arrangements for the Miller-Davis wedding. A change? Alistair asked. Is everything all right? Everything is clarifying, I said. Alistair, you and I have known each other for 15 years. You know I am a woman of my word. Absolutely, he said. Good, I said. Because what I am about to tell you is going to sound unusual, but I need you to follow my instructions to the letter. Go on, he said, his tone shifting from friendly to professional. I have been uninvited from the wedding, I said. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I beg your pardon? Alistair whispered. But you are the mother of the bride. You are the financier. Apparently, I said. My face ruins the aesthetic. I have been asked not to attend, so I do not spoil the photos for Vogue. Barbara, Alistair said, his voice thick with disgust. That is, I have no words. That is abhorrent. It is what it is, I said. But here is the thing, Alistair. If I am not a guest, and I am certainly not the host, then I am not the customer. I see, Alistair said slowly. I want you to cancel the authorization on my American Express card, I said. Immediately. Do not run the final payment on Friday. Done, Alistair said without hesitation. But Barbara, if the balance isn't paid, policy dictates we have to cancel the event. No, I said. Do not cancel it. But who will pay? The hosts, I said. The bride and groom, Jessica Miller and Hunter Davis. They have not provided a card, Alistair noted. I know, I said. And if you ask them for one now, they will panic. They will cancel. And I want them to have their wedding, Alistair. I want them to have the perfect, picture-perfect day they deserve. I leaned back in my chair. I looked at the photo on my desk, a picture of me holding Jessica in the hospital, my face bandaged, her tiny body safe in my arms. I turned the photo face down. Here is what we are going to do, I said. You are going to let the wedding proceed. You are going to let them eat the lobster. You are going to let them drink the champagne. And then, right when the speeches begin, you are going to present them with the bill. During the reception, Alistair asked. On a silver platter, I said. Make it look like a gift. Make it look special. And if they cannot pay, then you do what you would do to any customer who tries to steal $80,000 in services, I said. You close the bar, you stop the music, and you call the police. There was a long pause. I could hear Alistair breathing. I could hear the wheels turning in his mind. He was a businessman, but he was also a father. Barbara, he said softly, this is nuclear. They wanted a memorable wedding, I said. Let's give them one. Very well, Alistair said. I will handle the paperwork personally. I will switch the billing contact to the bride and groom, effective immediately. The invoice will be generated in their names. Thank you, Alistair, I said. Oh, and one more thing. Yes? Add a 20% gratuity for your staff, I said. They are going to have to deal with a lot of drama on Saturday night. I want to make sure they are compensated for the headache. You are a generous woman, Barbara, he said. I used to be, I corrected. Now I am just a vendor. I hung up the phone. I sat in the silence of my office. The hum of the industrial refrigerator in the warehouse next door vibrated through the floor. I picked up a pen. I pulled a piece of heavy, cream-colored stationery from my drawer. I needed to write a note to accompany the invoice. Something short, something sweet, something that would look perfect in a photograph. I wrote 3 sentences. I signed it, Mom. I slipped the note into an envelope. I sealed it with wax. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the rows of saplings in the nursery. They were small now, but with time and care, they would grow into mighty oaks. But sometimes, no matter how much water and fertilizer you give a tree, it grows crooked. And when a tree is rotten at the core, you don't keep propping it up, you cut it down. I grabbed my keys. I had one more stop to make. I drove to the real estate office on Main Street. I had been toying with the idea for months, ever since I saw the brochure for the condos in Boca Raton. I had hesitated because I didn't want to leave Jessica. I wanted to be close to the grandchildren I hoped she would have one day. But I realized now that if I ever had grandchildren, I would be hidden from them too. I would be the secret grandmother, the one kept in the attic of their lives, so I wouldn't ruin the aesthetic. I walked into the real estate office. "Hello, Barbara," the agent said. "Here to look at listings?" "No," I said. "I am here to list my house. And the business." "The business?" the agent gasped. "But Miller Landscaping is an institution. It is time to retire," I said. "I want to be in Florida by next month, somewhere near the ocean, somewhere where the salt air is good for the skin." "We can make that happen," the agent said. I walked out into the sun. The wedding was in 3 days. Jessica was going to get her perfect lighting. She was going to get her symmetrical photos. She was going to be the center of attention. But when the bill came due, she was going to learn a very expensive lesson about the cost of appearances. She thought my face was ugly. She thought my scars were a liability. She was about to find out that the only thing uglier than a scar is an unpaid invoice. The Grand Bohemian Hotel in Charleston is a masterpiece of art and luxury, a place where velvet drapes hang heavy and the chandeliers drip with crystal tears. On Thursday afternoon, 2 days before the wedding, I walked through the service entrance. I did not go to the lobby. I went straight to the executive office of Mr. Allister, the director of events. I placed a thick, cream-colored envelope on his mahogany desk. "This is the note," I said. "For the platter." Allister picked it up. He was a man of impeccable grooming, with a silver beard and a suit that cost more than my first car. He looked at the envelope. Then he looked at me. His eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and professional fury. "Barbara," he said quietly, "I have reviewed the contract. I have removed your credit card from the file. The system is now set to bill on consumption for the hosts." "Good," I said. "I also took the liberty," Allister said, a wicked glint appearing in his eye, "of upgrading the champagne toast. Jessica requested the Dom Perignon initially, but I told her we were out of stock to save you the expense. Now that she is paying, I miraculously found 5 cases in the cellar." I smiled. It was a genuine smile. "You are a bad man, Allister." "I am a man who respects his vendors," he corrected, "and I despise ungrateful children. I have seen many Bridezillas in my time, Barbara, but uninviting the woman who paid for the very floor she walks on, that is a new low." "Just make sure the timing is right," I said. "Do not give it to them during the appetizers. Let them eat. Let them drink. Let the bill grow." "I will wait for the speeches," Allister promised. "When the room is quiet, when all eyes are on the head table, that is when the service captain will approach." "Thank you," I said. I left the hotel. I walked past the ballroom where the staff was setting up. I saw the florists bringing in the white hydrangeas, thousands of dollars worth of flowers that would die in a day. I saw the lighting technicians rigging the spots, carefully angling them to banish any shadows, any imperfections. It was going to be a beautiful stage, a perfect stage for a tragedy. Friday passed in a blur of cardboard and packing tape. While Jessica was at the hotel, getting her spray tan and screaming at her bridesmaids about the symmetry of their hairstyles, I was at my house on the marsh, dismantling my life. I had accepted an all-cash offer on the house that morning. The buyers were a young couple from New York who loved the rustic charm of the property. They wanted to close in 10 days. It suited me perfectly. I packed the photos of Jessica when she was a baby. I packed her kindergarten drawings. I hesitated over the photo of us in the hospital, the one taken right after the fire, where I was swathed in bandages and she was smiling, safe and unhurt. I looked at it for a long time. Then, I put it in the trash can. I didn't need the reminder. I carried the scars on my face. I didn't need to carry them in my luggage too. Saturday morning arrived with a sky so blue it looked painted. It was the kind of day brides pray for. Low humidity, a gentle breeze coming off the harbor, and a sun that bathed the city in gold. I woke up at 7 o'clock. Usually, on the day of an event, I would be rushing. I would be checking the flower deliveries, calling the caterer, soothing Jessica's nerves. I would be invisible, working in the background to make her shine. Today, I made coffee. I sat on my lanai. I watched a heron stalking fish in the marsh grass. At 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica. "Morning, Mom. Today is the day. So sad you can't be here, but I know you're sending good vibes. I'll FaceTime you tomorrow. Love you." I stared at the screen. The audacity was breathtaking. So sad you can't be here. As if I had the flu. As if she hadn't looked me in the eye 3 days ago and told me my face was a liability. If you have ever been gaslit by someone you love, if you have ever had someone rewrite history while you were still standing in it, you know the specific kind of rage that bubbled up in my throat. It is a cold, hard knot that makes you want to scream, but instead, you go silent. If you are tired of people mistaking your kindness for weakness, hit that subscribe button, because the lesson Jessica was about to learn is one she would never, ever forget. I did not reply to the text. I turned my phone off. I did something I hadn't done in 20 years. I went to a spa. I drove to a sanctuary downtown, a place where the air smelled of eucalyptus and money. I had booked the royal treatment. 4 hours, massage, facial, body wrap. For years, I avoided spas. I hated the way the estheticians looked at my scars. I hated the pity in their eyes, the way they would hesitate before touching the rippled skin on my neck. I felt like a monster intruding in a temple of beauty. But today, I walked in with my head held high. "I have extensive scarring on the left side," I told the receptionist flatly. "I want the most expensive facial you have, and I want someone who knows what they are doing." They assigned me a woman named Elena. She was older, with strong hands and kind eyes. She didn't flinch when she saw my face. She didn't ask what happened. She just applied the oils. She massaged the tight, painful tissue on my neck. She treated my skin not like a tragedy, but like a canvas that had weathered a storm. "Your skin is strong," Elena said softly as she worked. "It healed well." "It had to," I said. "It had a job to do." For the first time in 2 decades, I relaxed. I let go of the tension in my jaw. I let go of the shame. I lay there on the heated table and realized that I was not ugly. I was a survivor. And the woman getting married today, the one who needed perfect lighting to feel worthy, she was the one who was truly scarred. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was back at my empty house. I poured a glass of expensive Cabernet, a bottle I had been saving for the wedding reception. I figured since I paid for it, I might as well drink it. I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by boxes labeled Florida. At the Grand Bohemian, the ceremony was beginning. I knew the schedule by heart. 4:30, the guests arrive. They are greeted with champagne the Dom Perignon Alistair had found. 5 o'clock, the procession. Jessica walking down the aisle in the $8,000 dress. 5:30, the vows. Hunter promising to love and cherish her. Jessica promising, well, Jessica probably promised to tag him in her posts. I imagined the scene. The white hydrangeas, the string quartet, the guests whispering. I knew what Jessica was telling them. I had heard it from a friend of a friend. "Oh, my poor mother, she is terribly ill, a sudden flare-up. She is heartbroken she couldn't come, but she insisted we go on." She was painting herself as the brave daughter soldiering on despite her mother's tragedy. She was milking my absence for sympathy points. 6 o'clock, cocktail hour. This was when the bill really started to climb. I pictured the raw bar, the tower of chilled lobster tails, the oysters flown in from Prince Edward Island, the shrimp the size of a fist. I pictured the open bar, stocked with Grey Goose and Macallan 18. Jessica and Hunter would be circulating, accepting compliments, feeling like royalty. They would be drinking the expensive scotch, laughing with their friends, secure in the knowledge that Mommy the Bank had taken care of everything. They had no idea that every sip of vodka, every shucked oyster, every napkin was being tallied on a digital ledger with their names at the top. 7:30. The guests moved to the ballroom. Alistair texted me a single update. Seated, dinner service beginning. The bride looks radiant. The lobster thermidor is a hit. The bar tab alone is currently at $12,000. I took a sip of my wine. $12,000. That was a nice down payment on a boat. I closed my eyes and let myself imagine the ballroom. The crystal chandeliers dimmed to that perfect, flattering amber glow. The centerpieces towering over the tables. Jessica would be sitting at the head table, right in the center, flanked by her bridesmaids. Hunter would be next to her, looking handsome and vacant. They would be eating the meal I chose. They would be listening to the band I hired. They were living inside my wallet, comfortable and warm. 8:30, the speeches. This was the moment. The dinner plates were cleared. The servers were pouring the champagne for the toasts. The room would quiet down. The best man, a frat brother of Hunter's named Chad, would tap the microphone. Testing, testing. Can everyone hear me? I looked at the clock on my wall. 8:32. It was happening right now. In the ballroom, Chad was likely making a joke about Hunter's college days. The guests were laughing politely. Jessica was smiling that practiced, camera-ready smile, tilting her head to the light. And in the shadows of the service corridor, Alistair was nodding to his head captain. The captain, a man named Marcus who took no nonsense, would be adjusting his white gloves. He would pick up the large, silver platter. It would be covered by a heavy silver dome, polished to a mirror shine. It looked like a special course. It looked like a surprise. Marcus would walk through the ballroom. He would weave between the tables, moving with purpose. The guests would turn to watch. People love a spectacle. They would whisper, "What is that? Is it a gift? Is it a special dessert?" Jessica would see him coming. Her eyes would light up. She would think, "Mom." She would think, "Mom felt guilty. Mom sent a gift. Maybe it is the diamond earrings I wanted. Maybe it is the deed to the vacation home." She would clasp her hands together. She would look at Hunter and squeeze his arm. "Look, babe, a surprise." She would be so smug. She would think she had won. She had successfully exiled the ugly mother and still got the prize. Marcus would reach the head table. He would stop directly in front of the bride and groom. The room would go silent, waiting for the reveal. The photographer, the one from Vogue, would step closer, raising his camera to capture the genuine emotion of the surprise. Marcus would bow slightly. He would place the silver platter on the white tablecloth, right between the crystal champagne flutes. Jessica would reach out. Her perfectly manicured hand would grasp the handle of the silver dome. "Oh my gosh," she would say, loud enough for the room to hear. "You guys, my mom is just too much." She would lift the dome. The silver cover would rise, reflecting the chandeliers, and underneath, sitting alone on the cold metal surface, would be a single, thick, ivory envelope. It wasn't jewelry. It wasn't a check. It was heavy. Jessica would frown for a microsecond, confusion flickering in her eyes, but she would recover quickly. It was a letter, a sentimental letter, a tear-jerker to read to the crowd. She would pick up the envelope. She would turn it over. Her name was written on the front in elegant calligraphy, Mr. and Mrs. Hunter Davis. She would slide her finger under the flap. She would tear it open. Inside, she would find a folded document on the hotel's letterhead. She would unfold it. I took a deep breath. inhaling the salt air of the marsh. Right about now, Jessica was reading the header. Invoice, #4429, Grand Bohemian Hotel, Events, Debt, Bill 2. Jessica Miller and Hunter Davis. Her eyes would scan down the list. The venue fee, the catering, the flowers, the Dom Perignon upgrade, the tax, the 20% gratuity I had insisted on. Her eyes would reach the bottom line, the number that would stop her heart. Total due, $85,420. And right below it, stamped in red ink, payment due upon receipt. She would freeze. The color would drain from her face, making that expensive spray tan look suddenly sallow. She would look at Hunter. Hunter would look at the paper. "What is this?" Hunter would whisper. And then Jessica would see the smaller note clipped to the invoice. The note on my personal stationery. She would read my handwriting. "Since I am not a guest, I am not the host. This party is yours. Love, Mom." The silence in the ballroom would stretch. The guests would be waiting for the tears of joy, for the reading of the sentimental poem. Instead, they would see the bride's hands start to shake. They would see her look up at the waiter, her eyes wide with panic. "There must be a mistake," she would hiss. "My mother paid for this." And Marcus, briefed by Alistair, would deliver his line loud enough for the front tables to hear. The previous form of payment was declined and removed by the card holder 3 days ago, Mrs. Davis. We were instructed to present the final bill to the hosts. "But," Jessica would stammer, we don't have $85,000. Marcus would signal to Alistair, who was standing by the lighting booth. Alistair would tap a button. The ballroom lights, the beautiful, amber, flattering lights, would suddenly cut out. And then the house lights would come on. The bright, harsh, fluorescent cleaning lights. The lights they turn on at 2 a.m. to tell the drunks to go home. Every shadow would vanish. Every pore would be visible. The romance would evaporate instantly. The music would stop mid-song. Alistair would step to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice would boom through the silent, brightly lit room. "I apologize for the interruption. However, we have a situation regarding the payment for this evening's festivities. Until the bill of $85,000 is settled by the hosts, all service is suspended immediately. Bar staff, please lock the cabinets." The sound of 200 gasps would fill the room. I sat on my floor in the dark house, sipping my wine. I didn't need to see it to enjoy it. I imagined Jessica standing there, under the harsh fluorescent lights, exposed. No filter, no angles. Just a spoiled girl holding a bill she couldn't pay, surrounded by people who were suddenly realizing that the fairy tale was a fraud. My phone rang. It was Jessica. I looked at the screen. I watched it ring. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. Finally, I picked up. "Hello?" I said calmly. "Mom!" Jessica screamed. It wasn't her influencer voice. It was a guttural animal screech. "What did you do?" "They turned the lights on. They stopped the wedding. Everyone is staring at me." "I imagine they are," I said. "The lighting is very specific, isn't it?" "Fix this," she shrieked. "Give them your card. They are threatening to call the police. They say it is theft of services." "It is theft," I said. "You consumed $80,000 worth of goods that you didn't pay for." "But you promised," she cried. "You always pay. You are my mother." "I was your mother when I pulled you out of a fire," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I was your mother when I rebuilt my life to give you everything. But 3 days ago, you decided I wasn't presentable enough to be your mother in public. You decided I was just a financier." "I didn't mean it like that," she sobbed. "I just wanted the photos to be nice." "Well," I said, looking out at the moon reflecting on the marsh water. "You wanted a picture-perfect wedding. I hope you can afford the prince, because I am done paying for your vanity." "Mom, please. Hunter's parents are freaking out. They don't have the money either. We will be arrested." "Then I suggest you start a GoFundMe," I said. I hear your followers are very loyal." "Mom." "Goodbye, Jessica," I said. "Enjoy the reception. It is all yours." I hung up the phone. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen and poured the rest of the wine down the sink. I didn't need it anymore. The taste of victory was sweet enough. I grabbed my keys. I walked out to my truck. The for sale sign in the yard glinted in the moonlight. I started the engine. I backed out of the driveway. I pointed the truck south, toward Florida, toward the ocean, toward a place where the sun would shine on my face and I wouldn't care who saw it. Behind me, in the city, the Grand Bohemian Hotel was in chaos. But ahead of me, the road was wide open. I drove through the night. The headlights of my Ford truck cut through the darkness of the Georgia interstate, eating up the miles between my old life and my new one. I did not turn on the radio. I listened to the hum of the tires on the asphalt. It was a steady, rhythmic sound, like a heartbeat returning to normal after a long, panicked sprint. My phone, lying on the passenger seat, lit up, occasionally, with desperate texts from numbers I did not recognize. Hunter's mother, Jessica's bridesmaids, maybe even Hunter himself. I did not look at them. I knew what was happening back in Charleston. I could see it as clearly as if I were standing under those harsh fluorescent lights myself. And I was right. According to the police report, which I obtained a copy of weeks later for my records, the situation at the Grand Bohemian devolved rapidly after I hung up the phone. When it became clear that I was not coming back and that I was not going to pay, the reality of the invoice set in. Mr. Allister, true to his word, refused to resume service. The bar remained locked. The band began packing up their instruments, the drummer loudly complaining about the wasted evening. Jessica tried to pivot. She turned to Hunter's parents, the Davises. "You have to pay it," she screamed at them in front of the silent ballroom. "You are the groom's parents. Do something." But the Davises, it turned out, were just like their son, all surface, no substance. They lived in a big house they couldn't afford and leased luxury cars they struggled to fuel. Hunter's father pulled out a credit card, his hand shaking, and handed it to the waiter. The machine beeped. Declined. He tried another. Declined. The humiliation was absolute. The guests, realizing there was no more alcohol and that the police were on their way, began to filter out. There were no polite goodbyes. There were just awkward shuffles, people avoiding eye contact, clutching their purses and slipping out the side doors. The photographer from Vogue packed his gear. He deleted the photos from his memory card. He wasn't going to submit a story about a wedding that ended in a theft of services dispute. It didn't fit the aesthetic. Then, the police arrived. 2 officers entered the ballroom. They found a hysterical bride in an $8,000 dress sitting on the floor, weeping over a plate of cold lobster she hadn't paid for. They found a groom who was trying to hide in the bathroom. It wasn't a criminal arrest, not that night. It was a civil dispute, but the police filed a report for theft of services to document the incident for the hotel's legal team. They forced Jessica and Hunter to sign a promissory note acknowledging the debt. They were escorted off the property. Jessica had to walk through the lobby of the hotel, past the tourists and the guests enjoying their paid-for cocktails, trailing her heavy dress behind her. There was no lighting crew to banish the shadows. There was just the stark, ugly truth of her own entitlement. I pulled into a rest stop near the Florida border just as the sun was coming up. I bought a coffee from a vending machine. It tasted like burnt plastic, but it was the best coffee I had ever had because I bought it with my own money, for myself. I walked back to the truck and checked my phone. I decided to unblock Jessica's social media, just for a moment. The perfect wedding was trending, but not in the way she wanted. A guest, I suspect it was one of her frenemy bridesmaids, had live-streamed the moment the lights came on. The video had 50,000 views. The comments were brutal. Imagine inviting Vogue, but forgetting to pay the bill. The mom is a savage. I stand with Barbara. Why is the lighting so ugly? I thought she said it was aesthetic. Jessica had wanted to go viral. She had gotten her wish. She was famous. She was the face of entitlement. I turned the phone off. I threw it onto the passenger seat. I crossed the state line into Florida an hour later. The air changed. It became heavier, saltier. I rolled down the windows. I arrived in Boca Raton at noon. My new condo was on the 4th floor of a building overlooking the ocean. It wasn't a mansion. It was a 2-bedroom unit with tile floors and a wide balcony. I walked in. It was empty, echoing. I walked to the sliding glass door and opened it. The roar of the ocean filled the room. I stepped out onto the balcony. The sun was fierce. I turned my face toward it. For 20 years, I had hidden the left side of my face. I wore high collars. I grew my hair long to curtain the scars. I sat in corners. I lived in the shadows so my daughter could shine. I reached up and pulled the hair tie out of my hair. I shook it loose. Then, I tucked my hair behind my ears. Both ears. I let the sun hit the scars. It felt warm. It didn't burn. Epilogue. 6 months later. The fall in Florida is gentle. The humidity breaks, and the ocean turns a deep, sapphire blue. I was at the local garden center, picking out hibiscus plants for my balcony. I had started a small consulting business, helping the local condo boards with their landscaping. It was low stress. I worked when I wanted. Barbara, I turned. It was a woman from my building, Susan. She was a retired nurse from Ohio. "Hi, Susan," I said. "We are having a potluck on the pool deck tonight," she said. "You should come. Bring that potato salad you make." "I would love to," I said. Susan didn't look at my scars. She looked at my eyes. She didn't care about my texture. She cared about my potato salad. I went home and prepared the food. While the potatoes were boiling, my phone rang. It was a number from a Charleston law firm. I answered. It was the attorney representing the Grand Bohemian Hotel. "Mrs. Miller," the lawyer said, "I am calling to update you on the proceedings against Jessica Miller and Hunter Davis." "I am not a party to that lawsuit," I reminded him. "I know," he said, "but I thought you would want to know. The court entered a judgment against them yesterday. They have been ordered to pay the full $85,000 plus legal fees." "Do they have it?" I asked, stirring the mayonnaise. "No," the lawyer said. "We are garnishing their wages. Jessica has taken a job as a receptionist at a dental office. Hunter is working at his father's car lot. It will take them about 10 years to pay it off." "I see," I said. "Also," the lawyer hesitated, "I believe the stress caused a rift. The divorce papers were filed last week." 6 months, I said. "That didn't last long." "No," he said. "It didn't." I thanked him and hung up. I stood in my kitchen, looking out at the ocean. I thought about Jessica. I thought about her working at a reception desk, answering phones, forced to be polite to strangers to pay for a party that ended in disaster. I wondered if she still worried about the lighting in the office. I wondered if she realized that the only thing that pulls focus more than a scar is a garnishment order. I felt a twinge of sadness, the ghost of the mother I used to be. I wished it hadn't ended this way. I wished she had just taken the coffee, looked me in the eye, and said, "I love you, Mom, come as you are." But she didn't. She chose the picture over the person. I finished the potato salad. I put it in a nice bowl. I checked my reflection in the mirror by the door. I was wearing a sleeveless top. The scars on my neck were visible. The ripple of skin on my cheek was exposed. I didn't fix my hair to hide it. I put on a pair of gold earrings that caught the light. I walked out the door and down to the pool. The party was in full swing. There was music. There was laughter. Susan waved at me from across the deck. "Barb, over here!" I walked through the crowd. I didn't keep my head down. I smiled at people, and they smiled back. I realized then that the only person who had ever been ashamed of my face was the one person whose life I had saved with it. And she was 500 miles away, paying for her own mistakes. I set the bowl down on the table. "Looks delicious," a man named David said, smiling at me. "I love your earrings, by the way. They really suit you." "Thank you," I said. "I bought them for a special occasion." "What occasion?" My retirement, I said, from being a doormat. If you have people in your life who want you to shrink so they can feel big, who want to edit you out of the picture because you aren't perfect, do not wait for the wedding. Do not wait for the invoice. Send them the bill for your dignity today and walk away. I took a sip of iced tea and watched the sun dip below the horizon. It was a perfect sunset. The lighting was spectacular, and for the first time in 20 years, I didn't ruin the view.